Have you been considering a rear seat delete for your Jeep Gladiator, but can't bring yourself to spend hundreds of dollars on a pre-manufactured kit? Or you have the means and ability to do it, you just don't know how to go about laying it out? Well, look no further, because in today's video, with just a few simple hand tools, I'm going to show you a foolproof method to do it yourself. So if you want to learn something cool, add some usable storage space to the interior of your Jeep Gladiator, and save yourself a lot of money, stay tuned. Hey, welcome back to the Gator Overland channel. I'm John, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to simply construct this 60% rear seat delete for your Jeep Gladiator. Now I know a few of you out there are probably wondering, why would anybody want to delete the rear seats out of their vehicle? Well, the simple answer is, this won't apply to everyone. It just so happens that the Jeep Gladiator comes in only a 4-door application, but not all Jeep Gladiator owners have the intention of hauling passengers. And for that matter, they have a big, now usable, waterproof space for storage of gear, bags, or even fridges for that matter. So you can see how it can apply to some people. Now I know some of you out there are thinking, well, you could just simply fold up the seats. Well, that's no problem at all. But you still sacrifice a little bit of actual horizontal length. You still got some vertical length in here. As you can see here, this goes all the way back here. We're adding about 7 square feet to the actual interior. And if you go further and do 100% delete, then you've increased even further on the amount of storage space for the back of your Gladiator. Not only giving you a security, but all your dry storage will be dry. That simple. Now, all Jeep Gladiators do come standard with a rear folding bench seat, like you see here. They're separated into 2 sections, a 60% two-seater and a 40% single-seater. Now, if you do have the intentions of having passengers, but you still need the storage space, you can still do a 60% seat and a 40% delete, whatever works out for you. Or totally, if you have no passengers, you can opt for a 100% delete, opening up a huge space for the back of your Gladiator. In our case, we have a little one on the way, so we opted to go with the 60% delete to allow us to store bags and a few software equipment for charging, and still have room for our baby seat. So in the worst case scenario, we also have a flat deck to change a dirty diaper. For your viewing convenience today, this video is time-stamped, allowing you to go to any portion of the video without actually having to show through. Don't forget to check the description below for links to materials and my Dropbox. I will have a very detailed PDF to show you how to make this deck, and it will be pretty much foolproof. So other than that, let's get started. Tools. Everything you see here is at least, but not limited to, what is required to either remove your seat or construct your rear seat delete. You might even have some tools of your own to make this project go even easier. Now, all this will be listed in the description below, but I'll just give a brief overview. I did go with some template cardboard. It is 1/4 inch thick. I picked it up at a local hardware store. It was actually the lid to something. If you want to be more safe than sorry, go ahead and pick you up some of that. But you'll definitely need, as you can see it sitting on it right now, a 4x4 sheet of plywood. I chose to go with 12mm 1/2 inch birch. Your ability to go with anything you want. You could even use starboard all the way up to aluminum or metals if you wanted to. But for our case, it's lightweight and super rigid. Power tools, skill saw. We have our jigsaw for making tight corner cuts. We have our drill right there. If you're using battery powered, make sure everything is charged before you get started. You know, nothing's worse than actually getting started and then having to wait to recharge. Definitely have your safety glasses here. We have some other manual methods of cutting right here. We have our straight edges and levels. Those will come in. I'll show you that a little bit later. Measuring tape. We have our marking utensils. Now, as far as drills, we'll have a 1/8 drill bit for making pilot holes, 3/8 for working with our fasteners, and a 1/2 inch for working with the original anchor bolts. We'll go over all that. And if you choose to countersink, you'll need a 1-inch wood bit and some electrical tape. Now, as far as fasteners, sockets, and removal tools, you'll need a T20 Torx bit and just some normal socket 3/8. For size, you'll need an E14. That's for removing the original anchor bolt, 10mm, and for our fasteners, it'll be a 9/16. Now, the actual materials you'll need, as mentioned, we have the plywood underneath here. You need some 1x1 by 1/8 thick aluminum angle. You'll need 3/8 by 1 1/4 inch long bolts, 3/8 nuts, and we're going to go with 5/16 washers. So we're going to use 14 nuts and bolts, 28 washers. And if you don't want to have to use this E14 every time, you can opt for a 1.75 M12 bolt at about a 40mm long, and that should be just fine. it's going to work out. I believe it's a 13/16 socket for that. But that'll wrap up all the stuff you need. All right, the first steps to removing the 60% side, you want to go ahead and raise up the seats like this. If you have a bin or the lockable storage underneath, you'll need to remove that. You'll need a 10mm socket or wrench. If you got a gun, it goes a little bit quicker. On the storage bin, it actually has a rubber mat underneath it. Will expose the 4 10mm nuts. Once you get those taken out, remove that. The next step is pretty simple. Get you a T20 Torx bit, whether it's on one of these or you actually have a socket. And there's a little set of screws that holds on this little plastic shroud right here. There's one on this side and one on this side. Once that gets done, just kind of pop that up and out. If you want, you can put the screws back in for safekeeping. Next, you'll want to take your 10mm socket and a ratchet, and right here on the inside bracket of the 40% seat, there are 2 10mm bolts. You'll want to remove those, and that will allow you to remove the 60% side of the seat. Next is removing the 4 anchor bolts that hold the 60% seat section to the body. What you'll need is a breaker bar and a regular ratcheting wrench, as well as your E14 Torx, external Torx star fitting, just like that, to fit right there. Once you get your breaker bar done a little bit, enough to where you can get some back and forth action going, work it out with your ratcheting wrench and then switch the direction and work it back in. That helps get the thread lock that comes from the factory out of the bolt and makes it a lot easier for coming back and doing the installation. These will go back into place normally underneath the deck. We will only be utilizing the bolts at the back. Now that you have all your nuts and fasteners out of the way, basically the seat's in here loose and held up by the tether on the back side. So just the same that you would normally lean the seat forward, you just pull up on that. The seat is now movable and you just come on out with it. Next up is the more time-consuming portion of the project. At least for me it was. For you guys it's going to be a whole lot easier because I've done all the work for you. We're making a template. We're just going to slide this in here like that. As you can see, it fits perfectly around the back side and all the way around. And we have our supports. As you can see right here, I have it cut out to fit in, go underneath the transmission tunnel right there. And we have our front portion right here. All the dimensions are documented, so literally all you have to do is buy a 4x4 piece of birch and cut out the little sections that I've done per the information that I give you, and you'll have exactly this. Now I do encourage you to maybe do a template just for measure twice, cut once. This is 1/4 inch cardboard. It worked out great. It's a little tough to do with even a box blade. Just make sure you have fresh blades and it'll be pretty good to go. So next up, show you how to make this. Stay tuned. Now that we have our cardboard template to reference, it's time to show you just how easy it is to create your own delete. So with the template, we're going to reference all the dimensions and transfer them over to the plywood. Now for the plywood, you can use any plywood you want to. I decided to go with 12mm or 1/2 inch birch. And the reason why I went with birch is it has this nice plane on the both top and the bottom. It's not birch on the interior, that's all right, but it makes it nice for if you want to paint it, stain it, or Line-X it. So for reference, we have our removals here for the cup holder. We have our removal here for the back area, which is a tray and the subwoofer. And there is simply your seat delete for reference. So I've transferred all the dimensions over to our birch. And I know it's probably hard to see for those of you watching YouTube, but I will have a really nice PDF to reference. Check the description below. This is more or less for reference for you to just see how easy it is to line it out. I wanted to show all the simple tools it takes to actually create this yourself. So with your straight edge, you're pretty much going to be 30 3/4 inches this direction and 33 13/16 this direction to right here. You're going to put your straight edge up against, mark a line. You can either cut it out to this point and cut it out to that point or go all the way through. I actually made a true line all the way through. It worked out fine. And from there, you will go through and trim out your actual rear pieces and your cup holder pieces. And it just so happens that this distance around here, 30 3/4 inches, leaves exactly 17 inches from here to here. Now I'm going to show you how to make the supports and how to get this proper line, but it just so happens the distance from the back of the cup holder to where the seat base is 17 inches, and from the side of the cup holder over to the door is 17 inches. So it's a perfect use of excess material. And just like that, we have our template to reference. Now everything you see here, I've actually gone through and darkened in all the dimensions here for it's easier to see. And again, as mentioned, check the PDF in the description below. You have 2 inches here, 4 inches here, 2.5 inches, 24 inches here, 3 3/4, 4 inches, 4 1/4, 33 13/16, 20 1/2, 3 1/2. This is 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches for your 45. And then from this point here over is 10 1/4. And then going all the way up to the end is 30 5/16. Don't credit this line right here. This line was only to find the 4 inches down on both sides so we can get our proper removal of our pieces. Check that out right there. Now some of you can leave this portion in. This went all the way to the end. It's about 3/8 piece. There's a piece of trim that comes down the back wall of the Gladiator. If this is in, it will slide up underneath there. That's not a problem. I just wanted it to be flush with the outside of the plastic. And again, as mentioned, we have these pieces right here for our supports made out of the excess material. And that's it. Simple as that. Cut 1, cut 2, cut 3, cut 4. That's it. All right, next I'm going to show you how to get this proper edge to align for your transmission channel right here. So all you need is a piece of spare cardboard, preferably an extremely straight edge, one of the outside edges of a folding box. The bottom is not really relevant. All you're using it for is basically for tracing. So I have a bubble level sitting here. You want to reference it to level because that's where your deck is going to be. So whenever you measure your, or actually scribe your line, you want it referenced to pretty much level. As you can see, it's level. So all you want to do is take your protractor here. You want to have your pencil out a little bit further than the tip here, and more or less spread it out far enough to where whenever you get all the way down to the bottom, you don't run off the bottom of the paper. If you do, you can just move the protractor out a little bit further. You want to have, once you get to the bottom, your straight edge again. That way you can reference it to whenever you're trimming. So from here, we'll go ahead and move it there. Start out at the edge here and just follow the transition of your mat. That goes up and then down, and then we go straight flat again. Now this particular process is going to be the same for everyone, but not everybody's line is going to be the same. I'm going to keep in the slush mats. People that don't have the slush mats will just have an easy transition there. You can go over that a couple times, but once you're done, you'll end up with a nice outline just like that. All right, same concept goes for doing the portion between the cup holder and the door. As you can see, we have approximately 17 inches from end to end right here, just the same that we did on that side. We're going to keep in the slush mat, so I want to account for this little protrusion of the Jeep logo right here. You will have to use a pencil of some sort. You can pretty much eyeball this one, but where we're going to sit it at is about right here, and as you can see, it's going to sit up over the top. So what we want to do, use the fat side of the pencil up against it. We're going to come right up to it, and we're going to stand it up, go across, and then go down. And that should give you a little bitty foot for it to stand on the other side. That way when we bring it back here, it will be enough to avoid that Jeep thing, and it'll sit down flush. Everything else is pretty much straight. Now that you have your cardboard scribed and cut out along the line, it's time to transfer that cutout over to the wood. Go over it a few times to make it nice and dark. And there you have it. It's the perfect cutout. This edge right here is irrelevant. More or less, it's going to be where it sits back on the transmission tunnel. And the top part is going to be a completely straight cut. And then that'll give you your proper deck height. After going through and measuring with our deck cut out, I found that 6 1/8 inches from the bottom, which is where the carpet is, up to the top will be the perfect dimension for our situation. So we're going to measure across right there at 6 1/8, 6 1/8. Now you have your perfect cutout that's made for your transmission tunnel, your little lip on the slush pad, and then where it sits on the carpet. The deck will actually sit down right here. And then once you cut out right here, go ahead and make yourself another good proper strip of straight. Lay up your other piece, cut out it. I found that 6 1/4 on both ends by 17 inches long, and then cutting out right there, leaving about 1/4 inch of a foot right there, and it sits perfectly over the slush mat. And when you're done, you'll end up with this. 17 inches by 6 1/8. This sits flush along the carpet, and your perfect setup for the transmission tunnel, just like it lines out right there. And 17 inches by 6 1/4 inches tall, and we have about 1/4 of an inch offset from the end to sit over the Jeep, and that's perfect. That one sits just like that. Next, we're going to talk about the support bracket. It is constructed from a piece of 1 inch by 1 inch by 1/8 thick angle aluminum. It is super lightweight, super rigid, and will never actually rust on you. So it's going to be great for this application. Now, as you can see, we have a series of holes there, 3 on the deck side, or we'll call it the top, and 4 on the support side. So we'll call that one the bottom. So the reason why we have them offset, not directly in line with each other, is if you put them directly in line with each other, once you go to fasten them, you wouldn't be able to fasten or slide in either of the bolts. Our overall length is 17 inches, and that corresponds with the foot pieces that we made, as you can see there. And we have on the deck side, we're going to go 2 inches over, 6 1/2 to center, 6 1/2, and then 2 inches. All that adds up to 17 inches. Now right here you can see that we are 7/16 offset. Remember, we're 1 inch, so 8/16 would be halfway through. We don't want to do that, and the reason why that is, we have our 3/8 bolts here, and we have 5/16 washers. So the 5/16 washers will still slide over the 3/8 bolts, but they have a smaller diameter, which is going to work great for here, sliding it into and not getting up against the actual edge of the angle right there. If you went with the 3/8 washer, or you set them into the center instead of being 7/16, you'll run into a situation where you can't actually push the fastener into the hole, and therefore it would be kind of a hard situation. So we'll actually move on to the support side. We're going to move 1 inch over, 5 inches, 5 inches, 5 inches, and 1 inch. So 15 plus 2, 17 inches. Again, we're offsetting 7/16. Now you'll want to probably use a 1/8 pilot bit right here and follow it up with a 3/8 bit. I didn't have the size above 3/8 to make it just slightly bigger than the bolt hole, but you can go through and wallow those out as needed to make the bolts actually fit through. Now, as you can see, I am not perfect at where I have them offset. The drill kind of goes where it wants to be, but that's not going to be an issue because we're going to put them flush up against the board, and we're going to use the holes as an actual template to drill through. It's going to be smooth and easy, so you won't have to worry about lining these holes out on the board before actually doing it. We're going to use the bracket as a template for your holes. That's that. Make 2. Now that we've created our support bracket, it's time to show you exactly how to lay them out on the board. Currently, we're looking at the bottom side of the deck, what we cut out earlier, and this is where the support brackets are actually going to mount to. As mentioned before, you will not have to actually lay out the holes here. We're going to use the holes that we made in our bracket to line up in our own template. Now, our material is 1/2 inch thick, and I want this to be flush up against the front. This is the front of the deck. This is the back towards the speakers and the little tray, and there's your cup holder for reference. So because it's a 1/2 inch thick, I have it measured at 1/2 inch back, and from this edge over is 1.5 inches, and from this edge over is 2 inches, and that will put your perfect placement for your stuff to line up there. And of course, you want to prop this up. You don't want to drill into the concrete, and you'll just drill out your holes. It's super smooth doing it with a drill bit and this birch. And then after you get that set up, you can go ahead and install your fasteners. That way that this thing is solid. And then from here, you'll line it up right there, and you'll come in, do your 4 holes there, and that side is complete. Now on this side, it's a little bit different. We're not going to do it flush up against the outside. We're going to put the actual metal angle. This is the deck side, so it's going to go down. We're going to put that flush up against the cup holder area, and again, it's 17 inches. We're going to offset it 3.5 inches from this edge here, and then once you get that done, you're going to place your holes just like that. Go ahead and put in your fasteners so it's strong, and then place your board up there. Of course, there's the transmission hump area, and you're going to come through and do your 4 just like that, and your brackets are simply done. That easy. Now for some of you, that might be all you want to do. The next step is completely optional, and that is countersinking your holes. You already done your 3/8 holes just like you see back here, and if that's fine with you and you don't have the ability to countersink, all you need is a wood bit just like this. Now the dimension from the top of this bolt to the washer is about 1/4 of an inch. We have 1/2 inch thick plywood, So we're going to measure down 1/4 of an inch and we're going to mark it with electrical tape. That way when we get to the depth we want, we can stop. Now you want to make sure that you let the drill do the work. If you push through, remember these layers underneath the birch are not birch as well, and they're all not created equal. So once you get thinner layers, you may accidentally punch through. I know from experience. So just let it do its work, and then once you get to the right depth, you'll have a nice flush option. I went with hex head bolts. You can optionally go with Allen style. I figured this is just as easy to put a socket over the top of it. This will allow for a nice smooth application. Nothing will snag. Now the back, I'm not going to countersink. Those are going to be the actual E14 bolts that go into the original seat location. Other than that, you just take the original hole that you did, you place it over the top of it, you get one good squeeze in. It will kind of waller a little bit. That's okay. The bigger it is, the more the washer fits. And then once it goes through, 1/4 of an inch, stop, you'll be good to go. Next, if you haven't already done so, it's time for assembly. Now, as far as material goes, we're going to use 3/8 bolts, 5/16 washers. Yes, they'll work with the bolts. And we're going to use another set of washer and nut just like that. So basically, you'll need 14 nuts and bolts and 28 washers to complete this whole setup. Basically, you line up with the flat facing out. That way it receives your board that you're going to come in for your support. Same thing with this, flat facing out. Insert from the bottom. That will actually sit flush on those countersunk holes if you chose to do that. Go ahead, zip that down like that. Set to a low setting on your drill if you're using a drill, and 9/16 is all it will take. Snug it down. Just work your way around. Now that you have all those brackets assembled, it's time to put in your boards. I did not do the flush seating on the front because I didn't feel it was necessary, as there's nothing to go across it. But I am going to do the bolts from the outside, working through into the hole, washer and nut. Just like before. And then repeat. All right, there you have it. We have our supports installed. They're actually really rigid. And I know that there's a lot of you actually going through your mind thinking, what is the actual capacity of this? Well, I haven't done any full testing of the max capacity, but I weigh 185 pounds and I can actually sit on this. I did feel it go down just a little bit, but I didn't hear any splitting or cracking. I will note that whenever it came from the lumberyard, there was a slight bow in the board. I did the bow towards the top of the deck. That way, whenever you apply a weight, it will actually rest out to being closer to flat rather than putting the board cupped and then further giving it the opportunity to become weak in that point. So in that case, it has held up to 185 pounds. Those of you who want to reinforce it further, take the tactics that you've learned doing these two and make you another support. I've actually measured it out for myself. It's going to be exactly the same height as the front board, or at least for me it was, and a little bit shorter, but you can use the same, and there will be a piece of angle bracket left over that will allow you to do that. And that probably generates another question. Do I plan to put a hatch in here? Actually, yes. I'm going to give it a little try with just a simple deck at this time, but I plan to probably do a 12 by 18 hatch or whatever I can pull out of my excess material that works for most of the things that I'll put in there. The problem with putting a hatch in, you actually take away from the rigidity of the actual whole deck structure because you're putting a hole in the middle of it. Not only will it become weak in the hole spot, obviously, but it would become weak on the outside. So to further do that, what we're probably going to do is make like a picture frame flange that goes all the way around, probably 2 inches wide. So if I'm doing a 12 inches by 18 inches long, I'm going to offset our 12-inch line of what we're doing to where that flange holds in just 1/2 inch. That way, if you're looking at it from the top side, like this, you'll see the hole cut out, and then just inside the hole, there will be a 1/2 inch inset. And then we'll be able to actually set the deck down in. Everything will be nice and flush, but the reinforcement of that 2 inches will actually drill in. It won't actually expose the holes. It will get it short enough to where it doesn't come through the deck, and it will actually disperse that weight across the flange all the way around. And that's one way that I can think of to reinforce and still allow for a access hatch in there. There's plenty of other ways out there, but that's probably the way that I will do it when it comes to it. So I figured I'd share those two instances with you. It holds 185 pounds, and the hatch is up to you. If you want to add in the extra support, totally up to you. You can do this. And now for the moment you've all been waiting for, or at least I have, because it's hot here in Texas and I'm ready to get this deck installed. But before we get it installed, we still need to locate the holes where we can anchor it in the original location of the seat. And to do that, we're going to use a really primitive method. We're going to use a strike action. We're going to take the original E14 bolts and we're going to locate them at the back set of holes on both sides, in the rear. And we're going to crank them all the way down until the actual bolt is touching the paint or the body. And then I'm going to show where all your hard work came and paid off, because this thing is going to go in here just like that. All your lines are good. You're going to double check down here that your little indentation in the foot is proper over your little Jeep emblem, and everything else is just right. And then you're simply going to take a mallet, hammer, preferably a rubber one, and you're going to whack right over the top of both of those E14 bolts. And then whenever you pull up your deck, well, it will reveal an indentation on the bottom side. Perfect spot for you to take your 1/2-inch drill bit and push right through. And there you have it. You're done. Finally got your deck. Those of you who are planning on putting in a hatch or an additional support, you can still go ahead and do that. But from this point forward, all you have to do is take your E14s, simply put them in the hole, crank them down. I wouldn't do more than about 10 or so foot-pounds, and you'll be good to go. As you can see, there's a little deflection in there, but as I said, it was going to hold my weight moving up and down. I have an English Mastiff and an Australian Shepherd. I have no worries with having them in here. I'm probably a little overweight for the design that I've done it for, but I don't plan on doing more than just a few bags. So as that goes, we're done. For those who are wondering, I did take into account the seat being able to go all the way back, but not only does it go all the way back, but you're able to lay down even further than you would if you had the seat either in the lay down position or the folded up position, because it would contact the headrest. Well, that about wraps things up. If you enjoyed today's video, found it informative or helpful in making your decision to construct your own 60% rear seat delete for your Jeep Gladiator, give us a big thumbs up. Let us know how we're doing. Share if you'd like. I'd appreciate that. There's also this new thing called a super thanks. It's a little heart down there. It's kind of like a tip, if you want to call it that. And if you find that this was helpful in your own construction and you felt that you want to give a little bit back, feel free to do that. If not, I just like paying it forward, sharing it with you guys, but every little bit counts. So thank you in that regard. Don't forget to check the description below, as I'll have links to all the materials as well as a Dropbox link so you can access the PDF. If not, you can contact me through my email and I'll send it out that way. Remember, we at Gator Overland encourage each and every one of you to take a daily moment to unplug and reconnect with the outdoors, even if it's just for a few minutes. Have fun, keep it safe, and just go. Thanks, y'all.